G'day, Steve. Thanks so much for joining me on the podcast this afternoon, actually, for recording. Good to have you here.
Thanks, Ben. Good to see you.
Awesome. Well, I love you to share a bit about your family. It's the first question we usually ask, and give us that context.
Okay, immediate family. I'm married. Have been married now for coming up on 20 years. It's 20 years early next year. And I've got a 17-year-old son who is 17 yesterday and a 12-year-old who thinks he's 21. And a comedian. And he thinks he's a comedian.
There we go, just like his father.
Yes. He hates it if you say that, by the way.
There you
go. No, I'm not like my dad.
Oh dear. What do you do as a family together to what do you like to do to just
we're a pretty close, tight-knit family, to be honest. We like spending a lot of time together, so it's not like we're four ships in the night. We do spend a lot of time together. Both of my kids are gamers, which is like to spend a bit of time online, which is frustrating as a parent, but it's not what we used to do. But I guess it's a brave new world, isn't it? We enjoy getting out on the water, so we get out on the water as much as we can. We got ourselves a boat last year when just after we came back from, probably a year after we got back to Australia, and we try and get out in the water a fair bit. Otherwise, see family, and we're not we don't do anything too exciting.
Yeah, and there you go. That's fair enough. And what games do they play?
Well, my oldest is, it's crazy, but he still likes that Minecraft. He does play other games, but he's really big into it. And I can't keep up with my youngest on the latest game that he's playing, and he's, yelling and screaming at the computer, and but that's kids, and they love it. But they're not glued to it 24/7. They're not addicted, fortunately, and they've really started, particularly in coming into this summer, they've really taken to getting out on the water with us as well. And we do a bit of jet skiing on top of the boat. So, well, not on the jet skis, not on the boat, but as well as boating. So we'll take them out together, and they love that, and just hanging out. So. We're a bit of a tight family unit. We've travelled a lot over the years and through their life, and we love to travel. And obviously, COVID's affected that, but we've turned that travel passion into probably about being on the water.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. And 20 years with Karen. What are some of your tips to maintaining a healthy relationship with your spouse?
Geez, that's a loaded question. I've got to be careful what I say, don't I? No, I always say to people, and not that I talk about it too much, but if somebody was to ask, I'd say just working at it. It's not always going to be perfect, and I also think that I got really, really lucky. And I'm not saying that to win brownie points. I just think both Karen and I got really lucky in that we got somebody that. We share common core values, and we like similar things, and we believe in each other and our abilities, and we allow each other to do what we do best. But we really work hard at it. We don't take it for granted, and we do work hard at it. And I think I'm really lucky.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah,
awesome stuff. And just doing the maths on it. So you were with Karen when you started the business?
Yeah, mate. I was actually doing the business before I met Karen. So I was already in this industry in a previous adaptation of the business and a previous business with a business partner. And I was doing that when I met Karen, and I was working part-time in hospitality. So that's the way I started the previous business with a partner, is that, there wasn't the money to go around. And so I would work nights in hospitality, and in particular, I'd work in nightclubs. And for years and years and years, I did that. So I'd work 5 nights a week and work 5 days a week, and sort of try and balance the two. And that was how I'd pay to get by, why I started my business. I didn't have a lot of cash and the backing, so I I had to do it the hard way. And And that's what I did. And in that I met Karen, and Karen was a nurse. And so that it kind of worked in the sense that she had shift work and I was working shift with work, if you like. And so our lives sort of, it sort of worked. And then eventually was doing well enough in business. So I was able to give away the nightclubs and just focus on the business. And of course, once you burn that bridge and once you're not spinning plates doing a million different things, that's kind of when the growth started.
Yeah, great. There you go. That's a nice, probably a nice learning for people.
You got to be in a position to do that, right? You can't just say, well, I'm gonna throw caution to the wind. I mean, you can, but I you got to do it. I had we were getting married, and you've got to be, you've got bills to pay, and you've got to be responsible. So you just got to do what's got to get done. But at the same time, I wanted to build this business, and I was building it. There was growth, and there was opportunity, and I could see down the track that this was going to be good for us. And so I did what it took, and what it took was to, not do what I went to university for, but to get into business. And although I did a business degree, I getting into this was more about, instead of working in a profession like you, I decided I want to be an entrepreneur and I want to do this with my business. And so I didn't have a bucket full of money and rich parents. So I had to do it the hard way. But in a lot of ways, I think that's what actually made me strong. That's probably what got me through there's a lot of ups and downs in business, and there's going to be some challenging times. And if it comes to you easy, I think it's going to be really hard to see through those difficult times if you got it easy. It went by doing it tough at the beginning. You prove to yourself that you want it, and so when the times are tough in the future, when things come up, you do what it takes.
Yeah. Yep. Awesome. And I think you skipped over a couple of things there, and I think we're missing maybe some context for the audience. But could you share, firstly, the degree that you studied at, the detail of that?
Do you really want me to?
Yep. And I know you downplay a bit, but I think it's actually a strength that helps you in business. And then also to share what business you run and sort of the examples of some products that you sell.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So, okay, where do we start? School, went to one. Couldn't afford to go straight to university. So I went and worked for a bank for 5 years, and that was interesting. It gave me a lot of financial education about stuff and banking and money and stuff like that. It taught me one of the most valuable lessons that came out of working 5 years in a bank was I was working as a teller. I remember the biggest job I did as a teller was back when they had those, was at the Ipswich branch of the National Australia Bank. And it was back in those days, there was a lot of cash went through there.
Yep.
And it was funny, I was 19 years old, no money in his pocket, and you're scratching around the drawer for change to go and buy your toasted sandwich for lunch. And the funny thing is, you might have had hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever it was sitting in front of you, but that was like monopoly money. But the money that was the same money, but it was different money because it was in my wallet in the top drawer of my desk that was outside the teller's little thing. And so that was real money, but the money that I was dealing with on a day-to-day basis, even though it was the same thing, I didn't see it as the same thing. And it was one of the old banking people told me that. And people that saw that money as being money were the ones that would maybe trip and fall or do the wrong thing, or get confused. And I never got confused. I was lucky. And maybe it was one of those old guys that you work with back in the day. And I saw that as something else, like monopoly money. And I saw this over here as my money. And I see that then transferred into business. When your business grows, you might at different times have a bit of money in the bank. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's yours. It's the business's money, and the business has got to pay its tax. It's got to pay the bills. It's got to be whatever. And I saw different friends of mine and people I know and whatever, and different examples of people that got confused between the money in their bank when times were good, or there just happens to be that time when money was in your account, and they'd go spend it on things that they shouldn't spend it on personally, and then not have the money for their tax or not have their money to buy stock or grow their business. And so that lesson I learned from the bank then transferred over into my business, where I might look at my bank balance one day and it might be awful, and then the next day it might be big and good and wow, look at that, and aren't I rich? But I don't actually see that as money. I do, of course, but I don't see it as my money to go spend. It's the business's money to spend on business bills and what's right for the business. And it's a separately, well, literally it is a separate legal entity, and it's separate. It's not mine. And that's why, as you and I know, we don't get into a Division 7A issue or something like that. So anyway, I went from there and I went to uni. I went to QT and got a Bachelor of Business, and I did an accounting major. And I left school. When I left university, I thought I was going to become a stockbroker. I thought I was going to be fancy, and I got a job in that sort of with a trustee company doing that sort of work for the first year after I left university. And it was in 91. I think it was 91, and it was when the Iraq War was happening, the first one. Keating was having the recession we had to have. All of those things were going on. I only lasted a year before me and a couple other fellas were shown the door. And I'd paid my way through university because I didn't have people and parents and money to just pay for me. I had to pay for myself. So I'd work all my way through uni. And then, there's nowhere to go. I had to do something. So I dusted off myself and went back to nightclubs. And because, half the people I went to my university with didn't have jobs. It was really tough times. I mean, I haven't seen tougher times since then, and I don't think when we go through the GFC in Australia, we go through stuff that we've been going through over the last couple of years. I don't think it was as bad as what we saw it then. Interest rates were high. It was crazy. But so I went back to nightclubs and I fell on my feet working at a club in the city called City Rowers, and I started back there at the early 90s. I'd worked there when it first opened in the late 80s, and I ended up spending 10 years there, and I got a bit lost. How do you say lost? In a polite way. It was the biggest thing in the 90s, and if anybody that might be listening that might have been that era, it was very popular. And I was full-time there for most of that decade, and it was, you were the king of the castle, and it was good to be the king. And it was a lot of fun. And we had a great time, made a lot of friends, and really nice, people from sporting Australian teams and Olympic teams and famous people, but, normal people. It was an amazing time. But during the second half of the 90s, an old friend of mine from school, he said, look, you got a couple of days a week at the beginning of the week where you're not doing anything. Why don't you give me a bit of a hand with this product that I've managed to pick up the Queensland distributorship for, and it's an absorbent that picks up oil spills when there's a road accident or something like that. It's like a powdery product. Yep. And I said, oh yeah, I'll give you a hand. Yeah, that sounds like it. Because I was business, I wanted to be in business, but I decided out that year working with the suits that I didn't want to become one again. I didn't want to do that again. But I obviously was very entrepreneurial. I had all sorts of things going on. I was managing bands and I was doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And so obviously I was going to be headed for being entrepreneurial. So I thought, oh yeah, this looks very interesting. I'm going to have a go at this. And I gave my mate a hand, and within a couple of years, I was, as typical of me, mate, why are we bringing this product, buying off this crowd that bring this product in from America? I can make that product here. I reckon if I did this, and this, we could do that. And sure enough, that's what I did. And tried to convince my mate to come with me. He didn't. I went off and did my own thing. And pretty quickly he got, it ended up, he lost his distributorship and he came and joined me, and we were in business together for about 4 years. And in that time, I'd got out of nightclubs towards the end of that time, and we built the business enough that we could, make a good living. Unfortunately, my mate decided that lots of different stuff that happens, and I don't want to go through all the ins and outs of it at all people, but businesses sometimes have partnership breakdowns, and that happened for us. And and it's funny how you feel victimized, vindicated. Well, I don't know what the word is you feel at the time. There's all sorts of emotions, but when 20 years later you probably look at it a little bit more reflective now, and maybe the things I did wrong and I could have done better, but either way, there was a bit of a coup when I ended up outside the tent, and but I had a good rapport with the customers that we developed, and I was the one that developed the products and everything else. And anyway, I was about to get married to Karen, and that was pretty awkward to go and tell your fiance that here I am, doing really well and doing okay in this business, and then all of a sudden I got nothing. And it was a pretty hard conversation, and with her family and with her. And anyway, I was encouraged by a bunch of the customers or the distributors we had around the place to get back into it. And so I did. And at first I just wanted to be as big as the business I'd left.
Yep.
Right. That was my only goal. And I could see at that point I could do well, obviously make double what I was making before, because I didn't have to have a partner. And I thought, hey, look, I can do this. I'm going to do this. I can do that. There was a few things that happened, and ended up that I had to, instead of being able to get somebody to make my product, which is what we did in our old business model, I had to make them myself. Yep. So I ended up in a little tin shed at Brendale. And I remember it was $600 a week, and I just got married and was getting married, and I had no money, and everything was going to the wedding and whatever else. And $600 a week, no, $600 a month. Wasn't even $600 a week. And I don't know if I slept for a month. I was so stressed about signing a lease for 3 years for $600 a month. I mean, I just, it was really scary. And jumping in the deep end, any assets and cars and anything I had at the time I'd sold or got rid of or borrowed against to go and get the equipment I needed to start making product myself, instead of having other people making it. And we were just a front end. But I did, and it was scary. And there was times there when I couldn't get the machinery to work and I couldn't make it happen. And I remember, this is out of Brendale on the north side of Brisbane, and I remember sitting there on a bulker bag of, I don't know what it was, one of the raw materials, and I couldn't get the machines, and they're all farm equipment that I'd bought, and trying to paste together to make something and put it together. I couldn't make it work. And I was, as a pretty low point, I'd spent everything I had. And I remember, tears welling up and all that sort of stuff, and couldn't figure it out. And I said, look, I'm going to go home. This is late afternoon. I'm going to go home. Tomorrow's another day. Something will happen. And so I went home and didn't sleep much, but came back to work the next day. And the next day, a mate of mine, he was actually my groomsman. At the time, he came in, and he came in with this bloke called Ross. And Ross was an old farmer, and from down in Northern Rivers area. He was just hanging out with Jason that day, and they came in just to visit to say good day. And I couldn't make this thing work, and I couldn't make the product was what they call bridging, which means it wouldn't flow through the hopper, and I just couldn't figure it out. And Ross walks in and he goes, oh, mate, I haven't seen one of these for us. Where'd you pick this up from? And, the conversation went along those lines. And I said, mate, I can't work it out. I don't know what I'm doing. And Ross walked over and he says, well, you've turned this the wrong way, you clown. And, in a nice way. And he's going, and it worked.
Wow.
Mate, now if I had given up the day before, I wouldn't have what I have today.
Jeez.
And I look back at, the partnership breakup that I had with that guy. I was the junior partner, if you like. And, I didn't have all the decisions. It wasn't going to become what I've made my business today because I couldn't make those decisions, those entrepreneurial crazy decisions. And I would probably, if he hadn't have done that, I'd still probably be the junior partner, a business much smaller than what I've got now. If Jason hadn't brought Ross along that day, I wouldn't have got that machine working. I probably may have given up. There's been all those, I think they call them thin threads, which get you through to the next day at these very low points where you just want to give up. That but every time one of those things happening, signing a lease for $600 a month when you just, don't know how can you get that much money? This is a long time ago, 20 years ago. But you get through it. But every time you do that, you get stronger and you can take more. So the next time that something happens, you're stronger, and it builds up a great word called resilience. And it just builds up your resilience to be able to get through those tough times. Nowadays, the tough times are generally more about staff, in the early days of the business. So anyway, I started back out my own business, and I just wanted to be bigger than my old mate's business. And that happened pretty quickly and within a few years, or what I thought his business was. And then we just wanted to be that next milestone and that next milestone and the next, and we kept hitting them. And, we went from just being a handful of products to being hundreds of products. And, we went from that tiny shed to, I think it was about 150 or 180 square meters or something, to, I think we, might have about 3,000 meters or something now. And so between them all.
Yeah. And so you mentioned a couple of hundred products. What sort of sections of what you do are they in? And firstly, maybe sort of start with.
I'll tell you the business. Yes, sorry. Yeah. Well, there's a couple of businesses, but the business I'm talking about that I started back 20 years ago, or thereabouts, is a business called Envirosmart. So, quick, cheap, shameless plug here: www.envirosmart.com.au, and we manufacture environmental products. So I'm that guy that makes all those environmental products that we use in day-to-day businesses people use to clean up the environment or to stop pollution for the environment and do all those good, friendly environmental things. So it doesn't make me a greenie, it makes me an environmental capitalist, but but somebody's got to make those products, and somebody's got to be the business guy that invents and develops and R&Ds those sort of products. So it started out with that absorbent that, you used to use once upon a time, and sometimes they still do, a thing called kitty litter, which you'd sprinkle on a spill on the road, if there was an accident or something. But these days, around Southeast Queensland where we are, I see it on the paper when the Courier Mail runs a photo of some car accident, you'll see this brown fibrous looking stuff that is on the ground at that car accident. Well, that's my product. Yeah, wow. And so, or in most cases anyway. So that was my very first product. It was a product I've developed back in that partnership or before that partnership. And it's a product that's still our biggest selling product today. It comes in various forms. So we don't only, and there's about half a dozen different formulas now that are slightly changed and different formulas. Our original product, still our original product and still our biggest selling product, but we're that white label guy. So how there's SPC baked beans. I don't know if there's SPC baked beans, but there's one brand of baked beans, and that same guy then goes and makes his competitors' baked beans. He makes the Woolworths ones and the Coles ones. Well, I'm that guy for environmental products. So I not only make my own, but a good portion of the brands that people will know out in that spill control area, a lot of those products actually are made in my factory, and we make them for our competitors. And we don't sell direct to the end public and the end user, but we sell through distributors, which we have all over Australia and overseas, and we sell it through them. And that's our brand that we sell through our distributors, but we also make our competitors' products too. So not all our competitors, but a good portion of them. So, and so it's, instead of just being that what's called a Spill Smart floor sweep, instead of just that product, we now do most of them. And then I don't know about most, but probably. And then when you go to the service station, you see the spill kit in the corner. Well, yeah. I make all the stuff that goes in that and make those spill kits. Yeah, those wheelie bins and the bags and things like that. Yep. We make all those booms that go around ships, and if there's an oil spill or something. But you'll also see at construction sites where they might be widening the road, dredging something, building a canal development, they have silk curtains. We make miles and miles of that stuff. And
is that like, I kind of see it, you kind of see it at a few places, like if they're subdividing a block of land or building something, they've got some sort of sheet in wooden pegs into the ground.
Yeah, that's called a silt fence, and everybody imports that, and it's just one of those cheap Chinese products. And we do supply that, but it's not something we make. So it's more the big technical stuff where you might be on a watercourse and it's in a canal or it's in the bay or it's in wherever it is, and it's got a float at the top, and then there's a big curtain that goes down and a chain is ballast in the bottom. So we make a ton of that.
And
we make
down to the ground or down 10, 15?
Yeah, it depends on the job, whether it's a couple of meters or it might be all the way down. It just depends. Yeah. We also make a lot of things to go into stormwater drains to collect all the rubbish and stuff. You see that they've popped up on Facebook and gone viral at different times. Some of our competitors' products, I don't think ours ever have, but there's inserts that go into stormwater drains to collect all the rubbish instead of it going to our creeks and rivers, and things that along the way, gross pollutant traps and nets at the end to catch the rubbish and all that sort of stuff. So we do all of that. A lot of stuff to do with silt and erosion control. We just got a new product coming out at the moment in that area, which is quite exciting. What else we do? But a lot of stuff around spill control and secondary containment. So we do these big, what they call portable bunding. So bunding that is a secondary containment for oils and chemicals and things, so that if the drum was to break, it doesn't go anywhere. So it's all in that environmental space. We make all of that stuff. We make it here in Brisbane, and we're an Australian manufacturer, and has its challenges. And then, so it wasn't that one product that I was trying to make in that shed when I left my mate, or it's now lots and lots and lots of products. We also have a couple other companies, but the main one is Everything Water, and it does wastewater treatment. So not talking about poo plants, we're talking about not so much domestic car washes, the Servo or something, or car lovers, but more big truck washers for mining and coal seam gas, underbody washers for weed and seed control. That big stuff, where they're trying to wash those big mining trucks. We take all that dirty, muddy, oily water and give you back, and it processes it, takes all that stuff out and gives you back clean water they can recycle to go and wash more trucks. And so we're not using and destroying good water, because we are the driest planet around. So so we can recycle that water. So it's all about being environmentally friendly. It's about coming up with, it's funny, people have got, especially the kids, everybody wants to be environmentally friendly, right? But as long as it's not going to cost me anything, and as long as it's easy. So it's my job to make it cost effective and easy. It's my job to make it that it's actually just as easy to do the right thing than it is to do the wrong thing, and to teach people how to do that and provide the products at a cost-effective price, and develop those products as easy as they can be done, so that people will do the right thing instead of the wrong thing.
Yeah, I imagine like that. So something like a truck wash, if you've got to get water out west somewhere,
it can be hard.
That's going to be very expensive. But if you can get a load out there to fill up the whatever you've created there, and it reuses most of it, that must. And
it's not just the new water; it's also getting rid of the old water, right? So so if you've got dirty, oily water, and you've got to get rid of it, there's a cost to that. You've got to get waste contractors to take that away. So there's a big cost with that as well. So I don't want to mention any clients because that's their business, but we've got some pretty big names, and the big issue is it's not just using new water, because might be collecting that off the roof or whatever, but it's the getting rid of the waste. It's getting rid of that dirty water, and so that can actually be cheaper to buy the capital equipment to do that than it is to pay the ongoing costs of getting rid of that dirty wastewater.
Yeah.
So, but it all fits into that same spot, right? It's all about the environment. It's about silt and erosion. It's about spills. It's about containment. It's anything to do with the environment. So we're the guy in Australia that makes that stuff.
Yep. There you go. And I know you've given us some tips earlier on when you were mentioning about uni and how that, when you're at the bank, and how that applies to how you run your business from a cash flow perspective, which was good.
Yep.
The underlying accounting hints back then.
Well, there's a book I read too called Cashed Up, and it's pretty good. A bloke called Ben Walker is a pretty good author. Yeah. Get into that one.
Yeah.
Ching ching.
Oh dear. But could you sort of walk us through where have you got to now, and maybe, like, I know there's some sort of sensitive numbers that you probably don't want to share, but you're able to share, like you shared square meters in the warehouse. But what about like team size, or
Sure.
the offices or locations around Australia, if you're happy to?
Yeah, no, cool. Yeah, that's been a bit of a lumpy ride, that, for us, and made some mistakes, to be honest, at different times, and said I thought that was a good idea to go do that, and it probably wasn't a good idea, and we've had to retreat and regroup and go again. It hasn't always been a win, but it hasn't been massive losses where we've been, whether it's been touch or go. We've always been, pretty good on that. We don't throw caution to the wind in the sense of bet everything on black. It's a very much a considered risk management approach to it. But we have expanded. We've got when we started, and I was making that product just after Ross fixed that machine back 20 years ago. I had one part-time guy, Lindsay, who's subsequently passed away, unfortunately, but great guy, and him and I would make the product, and he'd like to start early, so we'd start real early. We make the product to about 2, and then I'd go and do the paperwork and try and sell the stuff after that. Then we ended up with a second person and a third person, and Lindsay became full-time, and so on and so on. We were probably a team of 4 or 5 when we moved out of that building and moved up the road to where we are now. We're in the back half of one of the 2 buildings we've got where we are now, and then we went to 7 or 8, and at each level, so there was managing more than a few people I had to grow. I had to learn how to manage people. And it's one thing to be entrepreneurial, and probably my gift is that entrepreneurial thing and being able to see where markets are and develop product and do that sort of thing. That's probably where I've got some skill sets. But then and I'm good with people, and, so I can sell the passion about our product and everything else. But, running staff, when you're doing a 2 or 3, you can be all mates and you can run it like we're a bunch of mates building a brick wall in the backyard. You know what I mean? But once you get above that, you've actually got to be a boss, and it's hard, to transition into that. And that's why so many businesses, I guess, stay at that, less than a handful of people. And it's really hard. And I had to learn some hard lessons to get to that 7 or 8 and stay at that 7 or 8. And then that became a glass ceiling. And then I had to learn a whole bunch of different lessons to build the business to get to 12 to 14. And that was hard. And
what was the differences in management style or structure of team that sort of took you through, broke that glass ceiling?
I really wish I could tell you. And it's not that I don't want to tell you, but there's been so many levels and so many things that I've had to learn along the way. I don't know if I can put my finger on it. I know the way I communicated had to be different. I mean, I inspire people and do that sort of stuff, right? You can sell the dream and come follow me into the abyss. I can do that. And that works on a smaller team. But you got to change that message when it gets to a bigger one. But then it had to be a bit more about accountability and process.
Yep.
But then to go to 12 or 14, you had to have that was really hard, because you had to have another layer again where I couldn't manage all of them on my own. There had to be processes in place. And so you see all those books in the E-Myth, and you go to all those seminars, and they talk to you about process and procedure and KPIs and all that stuff. And it's just dead set right. I mean, it sounds like such a bull. Am I allowed to say bullshit?
Yep.
A bullshit thing, but it's not. It's real. And through education, and so I've always self-educated. So what I've done is I've gone and, if there's a seminar, I'll go to the opening of a door. If there's something on, to go and learn how to go and be a better business guy.
Yep.
How to do that next level. I'll go to it. I'll listen to anybody, and I will. Yeah, and because you've got to learn, and because you've got to manage 12 or 14 people compared to 6 or 7, you've got to become not a different person. You've got to learn a bunch of skills. That you can still be the same person, but you got to learn a bunch of new skills. and the way to do things. And so I had to learn that because it didn't come naturally to me. And it's not something that accountability management, that managing people in a day-to-day business and holding people accountable is absolutely my biggest weakness.
Yeah.
You know, as you know, Ben, I could tell you, I can have great conversations with you, can't you, about money and accounting and, you know, stuff that we tease each other about, and all of that sort of stuff. And, you know, I do keep myself abreast of that. I did do a degree in it. So it's, you know, we can have a conversation like that, but I can inspire the team. They'll follow me because I'm working harder than they are. But I'm not that operations manager, that's the general manager that's just great at holding people accountable. That's just not I'm not as great. And I've had to come to terms with that. Now, I've been good enough to do it, to get the business to where it is, but now I'm looking for people that can take that part of the journey over, and I use my skills to learn how to manage them. If we're going to go to the next level. Now, so I found it really hard at that 12, 14 level because I had 14 level because I had to manage other people to manage other people. And then it became even harder. And so I would bounce back down to 10 and 9, and then I'd go up to 14 and bounce, and until I learned enough lessons to break through that glass ceiling.
Yep.
And then I go through that glass ceiling and I get to the next one, which I reckon was about 18.
Yep.
And then I hit that ceiling again. I had to another bunch of lessons. And the next ceiling was 25.
Yep.
And I think we've got that one right. And we're bouncing our head against a brick wall at the moment, trying to go through to that 34, 35, which is where we need to be. And I'm bouncing around there, learning lessons and bleeding from the glass ceiling I'm banging my head against. Yeah, but I'm still out there learning. And as you know, Ben, I'll go to almost anything to try and learn more. And that's, you know, as you know, I even went to entrepreneurial stuff that was going on overseas, and I went to, you know, I've been to all sorts of things, you know, and I'll join up and I'll learn. And if you're not prepared to do that, you don't want to grow. You know, as far as I'm concerned, if you want to grow and you want to build a business, unless you were gifted and born with some amazing skill sets, then you're going to have to, but you're not going to have got every skill set. There's going to be stuff that you're not good at. You might be good at managing people differently and better than me, and accountability, and you're a great people, you know, that day-to-day operational, you know, blah, blah, blah. But you're not going to probably be, not necessarily the case, but you might not be the person that's going to be able to look up and be the visionary that's going to look for the gap in the market, develop that new product, see where the market, and that's probably where my skills are. And, you know, my weakness is this one. And now I've been able to learn enough and go through enough to get to that point. But now I need to employ people that know how to do that, so I can really focus on what I'm good at. And as Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach, who I was part of his 10X program for a while, he used to talk about a thing called unique ability. And you got to work out what unique ability is. And when you've got to those runs on the board and you've got a bit of momentum, you can start focusing on what you're good at. And I think that's where we're trying to get to right now. We've got a few staffing. We're trying to find some staff at the moment, and as we put those people in place, you know, that's the next thing for us is being, and that's where we'll grow. Is everybody doing what they do best, as opposed to doing everything.
Yep. There you go. And have you got more products planned, or you?
Mate, every day I drive my staff spare. I'm driving. I'll drive home from this, and I'll see something and I'll come up with something, a fruitcake. And it drives my staff mad. I've tried to tone it down to not text them every night with my new ideas. But no, there's never going to be a shortage of that. Yeah, we've got lots of stuff in the pipe, mate, and we've come up with some really interesting stuff. We've got some stuff that's going to come out. We've got some really, really interesting stuff going on. You can only do it, though, if you've got good people doing the job they have to do and being held accountable and KPI'd, and you've got good people in the right spots. If you don't have that, then you get dragged back into the machine, which, as you know, over the last year, I've been dragged in the machine a bit. you get back dragged into the machine and you're not doing what I'm good at, which is out the front. So that's part of the journey. And I said, alluded to at the beginning that, eventually in business, staff become the biggest issue. And I don't want to be focused on staff, because then there's finance and then there's lots of different things. But I remember back in the early days, we just hung out for that order. We just wanted enough orders to get enough money to pay the rent, pay the staff, and have a bit of money left over. And we kind of, sure, we're trying to hit a sales budget and a GP and all that sort of thing. Of course we are. But it's not as much of a focus as it is of my day is managing, when you get bigger numbers, is managing getting the right key people into the right seats. And it becomes more about people management than it does about just looking for that next sale. And so that's also how the business changes when you get to the next level. I can't tell you what it's going to look like next because I'm not there yet. Maybe ask me in 5 years' time.
Yeah, no, cool. And I guess our main audience is actually service businesses, but you've got additional things to worry about being a product, and especially manufacturing. We
do have a service arm to our business. So we do. So those wastewater treatment plants, we have a service crew that go around servicing wastewater treatment and, truck washers and stuff like that. So we do have service people. So we do have to, but that's a small part of our business. So it's not something, we're not so much a service business as much as a product business. So I call ourselves a product manufacturer and wholesaler.
Yeah. Yep. There you go. And I guess where I was going with that is that your cash flow management, you've actually got it probably harder than a service business, where you might
scares
see,
you, doesn't it, Ben?
You might see $100,000 in profit on the profit and loss statement, but you're not seeing that in cash.
No, mate, not at all. No, our lockup is huge, isn't it? In comparison to other businesses this size, it's a bit scary.
Yeah, I mean, most businesses would have some form of debtors, but you've got a product business being stock. How do you go about sort of keeping an eye on not getting too much stock, that you sort of all your cash is there, but not running out of stock?
It's really hard, mate. It's really hard, particularly at the moment with COVID, and the current shipping issues that are going on with containers and the cost of containers and getting supply for imported products or imported raw materials. It's really hard. We're needing to carry a lot more stock of raw materials to be able to get by and not run out. And because customers don't, distributors, they don't care. Their customers don't care. They just want the product, right? Yep. So our stock levels are way up. Sorry, mate.
You're trying to defend against supply issues to sell.
Yeah, that's right. So we're probably, our stock's up 25% or maybe 20. And then, our accounts receivable is pretty good. It's pretty good. It's, but, I know that you guys, not you guys as in you, Ben, but I know that, a lot of service businesses, they might have accounts receivable, not a lot of accounts on accounts receivable. They might be just straight cash up front. And mate, I dream about that. Whereas our accounts are mostly 30-day end of month. And so because a lot of them are national and some of them are national accounts where they dictate to you when they're going to pay, our accounts receivable will run at, if we're doing really well, they're low 50 days. But otherwise, if you let it get a couple of stragglers, it's going to be high 50 days. And that's really tough when you've got a lot of, big turnovers. There's a lot of money tying up at account receivables, but yet most of our raw materials, particularly imported stuff, is cash up front. So comes back to that conversation about the bank. I can look at a big check come through because a bunch of stuff paid, but mate, I've got cash. I've got to pay containers that are coming through. I've got, accounts receivable haven't been paid. I've got most of my accounts payable. It's very either be, 20% of our accounts receivable would be our accounts payable, and so if that, and so, you've got to fund all the rest of that's cash that's out of my pocket, right? And if you've got, whatever number of, amount of money in stock, so then you've got equipment. So you own that equipment, you own the stock, and you own the accounts receivable minus your account payable. So that's the lockup. oh, here I am preaching to an accountant. That's your lockup, and that's a ton of money. And so it's not for the faint of heart going into a big manufacturing sort of business like this, where you're selling to distributors as opposed to going to the end user.
Yep.
And would I do it again? I'm not sure, but
yeah.
it's there, and it's, there's challenges with it, but the rewards can be, you're building a big brand and you're up against the big guys. Our competitors and customers are people like 3M. They're people like, big names, and the Blackwoods, the Atoms, the RCAs that you see around the place are customers, but also competitors. And so, and national accounts that, it's just, you're playing with the big boys. And we're just a little business that's just trying hard. And so we've got to punch above our weight. So anyway, it is tough. I'm not complaining, I turn up for work every day and give it my all, but it's, sometimes I wonder if I shouldn't have been an accountant.
Yeah, no, and I think it's good value for the listeners, and thanks for touching on some of those numbers. But it's pretty clear that you do have a handle on them, and I think that's what sets you apart in a huge way is the focus you've got on them. You kind of know your break even point or where you want to be profit wise each month, and we've had conversations around that. But again, hats off to managing cash flow and a WIP where. Yeah, it's just capital intensive. But I guess on the good side, it's hard for someone to enter the market.
Oh, mate, I don't think anybody could enter the market now as a new player and just buy everything new. It'd just be too hard. You had to have grown with it like a thing. And sorry, that was what I was saying about the bank, is realizing that money, I've earned that money over the years through growing and not spending everything that walked in the door. And so we've been able to get to that point where we have money in the bank and be in a position where we've got that. Now, I might not be driving around in a flashy car as much as some people, but we do okay. But the thing is that we own all of that. We own all of that background stuff. We own all of those assets. We're in a position where we've got that. And that's come through 20 years of hard work and sacrifice. And it's allowed us to do things like that time we took off to the US for 4 years and things like that. Yeah. So, and that's what we're saying about, locations. We're in Brisbane. That's where we manufacture most of the things. We've got a warehouse in Perth. We're about to get one in Melbourne again. We used to be in Singapore and Malaysia, but we pulled back on that when the oil price dropped. We moved into the US and we were doing, trying to expand our business in the US. I was over there. I actually moved me and the family over there for a bunch of reasons, building our business. But there was actually some personal reasons as well that married into it nicely. But and we lived over there for 4 years, and I would come back 6 or 7 times a year to run the business, and I would work through the night in America to run the business, and then we came back. And 2 years ago, when we're held just in time before COVID, and here we are making the go of it again and trying to take the thing to the next level.
Awesome. Well, impressive story. And thanks so much for sharing, in not only just the fun times or the cool stuff, but also, those heavy moments. And
there's plenty of them, mate. I don't want to scare people away from getting into this. If you're passionate about it and you're entrepreneurial, you're going to do it anyway, but it's not going to be smooth sailing all the time. Otherwise, you're going to be one of those internet guys that booms and then busts. It's a slog, but it's a slog that you've got to love. And there's going to be some dark and hard times, but there's going to be some great times where you're so proud of your people and the products. And there's nothing better than when I used to get off the Qantas plane at Brisbane, coming back from America, and as you walk up the gangway, and you'd be sitting next to somebody, and they say what you do. And you could walk up that gangway on gate 88 or whatever it is, and you look down to the fueling station right beside it. You can see through the glass window, and there's my spill kits, and I could point to them. And it's a pretty cool moment. And I know that's pathetically probably juvenile, but it's a big ego moment for me. And seeing your product out there in the marketplace, or seeing it on a truck, or hear people talking about it, and so that's inspiring. But there is tough times, and I haven't gone through most of them, and they're generally people related. But it's just, it is what it is. And you just got to be tough enough to see it through, and get up and take it on the chin and get out there and try again.
Yep.
And constantly learn and grow. Grow you as a person so that you can, because the business will only ever be as good as you are.
Yep.
And you've got to grow as a person for your business to grow.
Well, yeah, as I said, thank you so much. I've learned more about you today as well.
Cool.
And if people want to follow what you're doing, what you're creating, where would they do that?
Yeah, my business life or that secret private life? No, sorry, I'm only joking. Look, Envirosmart's on Facebook, so you just look up Envirosmart. And if you want to see stuff like that, and we have fortnightly newsletters that go out with really interesting environmental stuff. If that ticks your good column, go and have a look at those and get hold of those. You can also subscribe to it on our website and see some of the products we do at Envirosmart. Everything Water's there and Truck Wash and all those others are there, but go to envirosmart.com.au and sign up for the newsletter and you'll see some of the things that we do.
Awesome. And if you're driving around at a petrol station like I was a few months ago on the way back from a long trip and saw the Envirosmart logo on a wheelie bin, send that over to Steve because he'll
one of my distributors was driving that track. I forget its name. It's not, it's that one that 4-wheel drivers do where they go through the Northern Territory and end up on the northwest of Western Australia, and they go, I think, near Argyle Mine or something. Yeah. And there's a service station in the middle there where they all got to get fuel. Yeah. And one of my distributors was doing this thing as a holiday, and he's turned up there, and one of my spill kits is sitting there, and he just couldn't believe it. He's taken all these photos of it and sent it to me. He says, I can't get away from you. You're everywhere.
Following him around. Good stuff. All right. Well, thanks again, mate.
And, no worries, mate.
Yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
No worries, mate. Good on you.